Hi everyone, my name is Cidalia Silva, and I am going to be doing an interview with my friend Micaiah, who's here on the phone with me. Um, so I'm setting a timer so that we know when to switch over, and here we go. So Micaiah, of your prior jobs, which do you think was the most significant for you?
I think working at DCF was the most significant job because it taught me the most out of all of my jobs. It was kind of like a crash course in social work, um, learning how to deal with different personalities, learning how to deal with children or populations that I may not have worked with before. Um, and I learned a lot about myself in that job
Mhm,
as well, kind of what my limits are and how to challenge myself in a professional way and grow.
mhm. It sounds like it was a really kind of intense and possibly stressful position with a lot of new experiences.
That it was. It was yes, it was that. It was very intense, but it was very rewarding because of the new experiences.
Hmm. What were you trying to achieve by pursuing that career opportunity?
So, if I'm speaking truthfully, in the beginning, I was trying to achieve the salary, but after that, I learned that I could really grow in that field, and then I wanted to learn more about. I was working with adolescents primarily, so I wanted to learn more about working with adolescents and the way that I could be helpful to them and their families. So,
Mhm.
and I achieved that. So, yeah.
That's nice. So there was two incentives. You were looking forward to having increased kind of paycheck and access to those extra benefits and stuff. But you said secondarily, you were able to kind of explore this new demographic, this new population that you hadn't had much experience with.
That is exactly right.
Great, that's awesome. That sounds really nice. Sounds like a very rewarding, very rewarding situation. What do you think was like the biggest challenge of having to work for DCF in that capacity?
I think the biggest challenge for me was that nothing was really my decision. Every decision that we made had to be ran through a supervisor, people who were above us. So there were instances where I felt that certain routes were better for a family or better for children. However, I was unable to do what I felt was best for the family because it ultimately was not up to me.
So it sounds like there was a lot of times where you felt like disempowered or that you didn't have the power to make decisions that you thought were the most important or most considerate of like a family's needs.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, that sounds really frustrating. I imagine especially as a DCF worker, if you're the one who's spending all the time with your families and your identified clients, to have a supervisor who perhaps doesn't have that same amount of exposure making those decisions for you probably was something that I imagine provoked a lot of anxiety when you're trying your best to do your job.
Absolutely. You nailed that on the head. It was anxiety provoking. It was frustrating. It was a lot of things.
Mm,
Knowing that, I at least I thought I knew what was best for my families, but I was unable to do it because I didn't really have that pull.
yeah, I hear that. That makes a lot of sense. What was it that drove you to leave the job?
So I feel like that's a loaded question.
I'm sure.
I left because I was starting to see things within the agency that I didn't care for. There was a lot of racial injustice. There was a
Mm,
lot of, breaking up homes that didn't necessarily need to be separated or broken apart, if that even made sense. But there were just a lot of things that I didn't agree with, and I realized that the agency was very um, much driven by bureaucracy,
mm.
and there was a lot of red tape, and there were things that I felt they weren't doing in the best interest of the children or the families. So I ultimately decided I didn't want to be part of that.
Yeah, so you're kind of making a decision that best reflected what you felt were like your values and your morals in that situation. It sounds like you were acknowledging maybe some like social justice issues that were probably coming up in that experience. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine, especially being in this field, having to work in a job which then you think maybe perhaps is perpetuating social justice issues when we have that moral responsibility to be addressing those. This seems a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I felt. So I figured it would be best for me to remove myself from it and find something that better fit me.
Nice. Thank you. All right, why don't we switch roles? Why don't we pop over? So I will be the interviewee and you will be the interviewer.
Okay. So, um, what was your biggest achievement, just in general?
Honestly, I think I'm still working on my biggest achievement.
Yeah.
I think I'm the first person in my family to be pursuing higher education, and I finished my undergrad and did so pretty successfully, but now I'm working on, getting my master's out of the way. And that will not only be an achievement for me, but it'll be an achievement for like my whole family to say that we had someone who has, gone through that process. Right now, we don't really have anybody in our like lineage that's made that accomplishment yet.
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like you have already, even though you said you're still working on it, you've already made some pretty big accomplishments by going forward with your education and kind of breaking out of that family cycle.
Yeah, definitely trying to change our story, I think is really important to me.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. So, how did you approach it? Like, how did you approach trying to break out of that cycle?
That's a really interesting question. I think I saw, or maybe from like a young age, I think I had kind of convinced myself that education was something that once you had it, it couldn't be taken away from you. So coming from a family of immigrants, and seeing how much we struggled when I was younger with, food, money, housing, all these different things. I thought to myself, even as being like as much of a minority as I am, Hispanic, trans woman, all these different things, um, I kind of convinced myself, like, well, if I become a doctor, like I'm gonna be a doctor and they're gonna have to give me a job because I will have had so much education and so much experience. So even if they're not okay with who I am, they can't disagree with what kind of education, skill sets, experience, and credibility I'm going to bring to the table.
Right.
So those kind of like my way of shielding myself, I think.
Yeah, and I can absolutely connect with that. I think that a lot of people can. So, have you ever been motivated to do what you're doing, or can you tell me about a time when you were motivated to do what you were doing to inspire someone else?
Yeah, so I actually, through my education and through my own process of like transitioning into my gender identity and stuff, I kind of use that process to kind of inform a bit of like my own clinical kind of practice and experience. So I've actually um, in recognizing all the oppression and discrimination and stuff that LGBTQ plus people deal with on a day-to-day basis and how challenging it is to even do something like exist when you're LGBTQ, let alone transition. I started volunteering for these opportunities to educate providers, to do trainings for different, companies or businesses and stuff. And so I've done a couple. I've done one for Brown University. I've done a couple for University of Rhode Island. I've done a couple local events in Connecticut. I'll be teaching a class with a friend next week, actually. So I think that's been kind of a way that I've been going about that route.
That sounds like you have not only gone about the route, but again, achieved it. The same with your biggest accomplishments. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely
Yeah,
busy.
it sounds that way. So, okay,
I think we have probably enough time for at least one more, if that's okay.
okay, wonderful. So, with all that you have said and with all that you have accomplished thus far, what are you most proud of?
I you know, I am actually most proud of, I'm typically the kind of person who gets very anxious and very worried about things that haven't even happened yet. And sometimes I won't give myself the opportunity to even achieve them. So I'm just really proud of myself for sticking through with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge accomplishment in itself. and something to be very proud of.
Yeah, definitely. All right, thank you, Micaiah. I really appreciate you joining me, and thank you everybody for watching. I hope to hear back about, some feedback with the interviewing skills, what you think we could improve on. Thanks so much. Have a good night.